There are some basic principles of child development that guide us as educators, that guide researchers, and so we want to learn some about those this week. These are kind of basic underlying characteristics that, as a field, there has been general consensus upon. So let's take a look at each of these. The first is that development is lifelong. So we know that there's a change from conception to death, obviously. And we only look through adolescence in this book, but we do know that early experiences are really important in a lifelong development. We also know that development is multidirectional. It's not a clean, neat kind of upward sequence all the time. We'll show gains in some areas and losses in others. So every developmental milestone that we reach exhibits those. We also know that development is multidimensional. The physical domain includes changes in height and weight, gross and fine motor skills, sensory capabilities, the nervous system, as well as health and wellness. In the cognitive domain, the changes are in intelligence, wisdom, and perception, problem solving, memory, and language. And there's the social emotional domain. And the changes there are related to emotion, to self-perception, interpersonal relationships with families, peers, and friends. So in this book and throughout your time as a teacher and your time in this program, you're going to focus on these three main big domains. And some of them encompass other areas too, but these are the three big domains: the physical domain, cognitive domain, and social emotional domain. So you're going to hear a lot about those three as we study children. We also know, very thankfully, that development is characterized by plasticity, which means that we, children especially, are able to overcome great adversity. So, in this picture, for instance, is a child in Haiti, and the pictures on the left and right are only 2 months apart. And you can see what happened. He went from being 12 pounds to a healthy 4-year-old with just some good nutrition. So we know that when given optimal situations, again, development can often go back to what it would have been had risks not been presented, because humans have plasticity and the ability to recover from less than ideal or flat out bad situations. We also know that development is multi-contextual. So we know that nature and nurture are both important, and the fact that where we live and the things we do and believe are responses to the things around us. And so there's this kind of interplay between, um, there's this kind of interplay and kind of real deep contextual situation around development. So we have to be thinking about that bigger picture when we think about development. It's not just a matter of our genes or our environment. Um, they they work together to develop who we are. The analogy that I like to use when I think about this is that often our genes or our situation are the recipe, but how closely that recipe is followed will greatly impact the outcome. So, nature being the recipe, nurture being how well that recipe is followed. So, these are just a few of the things that we as educators and researchers have agreed upon regarding development. In order to make development a little easier to study, we also divide it into different periods as well as those domains we talked about earlier, the cognitive, physical, and social emotional. The first period is prenatal development, and that's between conception and birth. And this is when the human goes from being one cell to trillions of cells, and all of the body systems develop. And many things can influence that development. And of course, we're going to learn about those throughout this program. Then the next 2 years are infancy and toddlerhood. Again, dramatic growth and change here. The child is born completely helpless, and by the time that this period is done, they are toddling and talking and able to meet some of their own self-help needs. Then we move into early childhood, also known as the preschool years. And this is where the child starts to get into the larger world, makes more friends, their world expands beyond the family, and a lot of things become more refined. Then we move into middle childhood, or the school years. And what we often talk about during these years is connected to their school experience. So we're talking about things like sports and academic performance and just the types of things that happen around school and community. And then we finish up by looking at adolescence, which is kind of marked by puberty at the beginning and at the end by adulthood. And although the ages of adolescence kind of vary, so it's hard to pick specific time frames of adolescence or of any of these, really. It can vary by child. But these are some really important things happening during adolescence that can have lifelong impact into adult years. And that can be said of all of these, really. There are some issues or controversies in development, and the first is, does nature or nurture have the strongest influence on development? And we've briefly touched on that already. So while you will still find some outliers, most researchers now believe that they work together, like in that recipe analogy. And the second issue in child development is whether children are active, growing organisms that set their own development in motion or that they are reactors to environmental input. And we don't have the answer to that yet. That's kind of for you to decide as you learn more. Or we're not giving the answer to that yet. And the third relates to how development happens. Is it a steady, continuous process, like the sapling that eventually grows into a steady tree? Or does it occur in steps and stages, like an insect that goes through distinct stages of the life cycle? So these are things that are not fully decided upon yet through research, and may never be. But there's some things to consider as you learn. So thanks for watching this video as a little opportunity, and thank you for watching and encouraging you to watch others. I'll offer some bonus here. You could send me a Canvas inbox message, and in the subject line, put Module 1 bonus, and then tell me a little bit more about something that you're specifically fascinated by a certain age of development that we looked at on this slide. It could be about why you work with the age you do, or it could be about a question that you're hoping to get answered through your education about these ages and periods of development, or something like that. Doesn't have to be long, just a little brief statement about, I'm looking forward to learning more about this, or I was amazed when I learned about this. Mine, I remember in school, was object permanence, which you may or may not know what it is yet, but I remember sitting in a classroom going, oh, when I learned about that in development. So, yeah, like I said, you don't have to have learned it yet. It could be something that you've always wondered, that you're looking forward to wondering. Just a little something that you can send me a Canvas inbox and get a little bonus for watching. All right, thanks.